Hello, networking students. As you begin chapter 10 in the Introduction to Networking course, you are going to learn about router configuration. And as you work through this material, you'll find that you'll become much more adept at the configurations necessary to set up the router, and you'll begin to put into your tool set what you need to eventually set up an entire local area network, routers and switches and end devices, and have a complete working system. So to that end, there is a packet tracer assignment within this unit, which exercises the skills that you learn for configuring the router. So I'm going to share my screen now and work through some of the tasks that you will need to complete in order to be successful with that packet tracer lab. So let's take a look first at some of the materials that are built into the Networking Academy content. And I want to point out one particular thing to you. It's in this section called the configuration verification commands. And it is down here, second to the last in the list, the show IP interface command. It is shown in the materials here with an S on the end. That is incorrect. As you can see with the IPv6 command, it's show IPv6 interface singular. That also should be singular with the IP command, show IP interface, which is juxtaposed against the simple show command, which does have an S on the end, show interfaces. So just to make life interesting and possibly confusing, the one command, show interfaces, has an S on the end, plural, but when we put the protocol with the show command, it's interface singular. So be careful about that. You'll also know with the brief extension, the output displays in an abbreviated form, and that also has the singular form of interface. So let us take a look at the packet tracer. And again, it is called connect a router to a LAN. And when you open up the packet tracer, you may want to look at the instructions as they're built into the packet tracer assignment, or alternatively, you may want to open up the Word document so that you can type in the answers as you go along. Up to you. Also, be aware, if you haven't noticed already, that your completion rate or percentage is shown down in the lower right-hand portion of the instructions window. And as you move along through the assignment, if you do not have 100%, you can go to the check results and then over here to the assessment items and get a little bit of a clue as to what you are losing credit for. And that may help you to narrow down what to correct. So it is always important to look at and understand the addressing table. So each device is listed in the table along with the various interfaces on that device and any IP addressing and subnet mask information that is associated with each of those interfaces. If that device is then connected out beyond its local area network, you may also see default gateway information. Of course, in some cases, that's not applicable, and that's when you see the N/A in that column. Whether you are doing original configurations on a device, or you've been called in to troubleshoot a problem, or you're troubleshooting your own lack of connectivity, it is very important to be familiar with the Cisco show commands. They are a go-to mechanism for research and data collection about various aspects of your device and the network. So that is something that is stressed as part of this assignment. So in the very first part, we're asked to display router information. We're also told about some of the passwords. So it is not uncommon in these exercises to see Cisco as the console password and then class as the privileged exec password. That's not true for every single lab, so be careful and read the instructions. In this case, it's Cisco and class. And the first thing we are asked is to tell the command that displays statistics for all of our interfaces configured on the router. So we may want to go back to the chapter 10 content and take a look at the table that is provided to us, and we can see that show interfaces displays the statistics for all the interfaces on the device. But we are given the caveat that the command only displays the IP version 4 addressing information. So we may need to use the additional command show IPv6 interface if we want to look specifically at version 6 statistics for all of the interfaces. Let us move down a bit and discuss what command we might want to use to display information about only the serial 000 interface. So let us click router 1 and make sure that we're at the command line interface tab. I will hit the return key. I am shown the console login. I want to use Cisco, and then I will go into the privileged exec mode by entering class. So if I wanted to show interface S000, then I get a lot of information about that serial interface. I can see that it is up. The line protocol is also up, meaning it's a functioning interface. We can see the IP address, and it happens to be subnet masked in what's called a /30 network. We'll learn more about that as we move along. We can see something called BW, or bandwidth. It is 1544 kilobit with a delay of 20,000 microseconds. We can see things about the reliability and the transmit and receive ratios. And there's lots of other information as well. I can hit the space bar when I see more at the bottom to page through if there is lots and lots of inner information to see. So that should help you answer the first several questions, including the IP address that's configured on that serial 000, the bandwidth of that interface, and we can move on to the command to display the statistics for the Gigabit Ethernet interface, and similar questions to answer. So it would be a similar exercise. I'm using the up arrow to bring back the previous command, but this time I want to look at the Gigabit interface, and I can go through this similar report, and we can see the Gigabit interface is administratively down, and the line protocol is also down. So this is an interface which is currently not configured and operational, but we can see what its theoretical bandwidth is according to the report. There is no IP address currently on the Gigabit 00 interface because it is, again, not been yet configured. There is that's the hardware, or the burned in address, as you can see by BIA. So that is the layer 2 address or MAC address of the physical port. So let us continue down and answer a few more questions. Enter the command on each router and answer these questions. How many serial interfaces are there on router 1 and router 2? So how might we easily answer that question? Well, router 1, we're already on router 1. We can use a show command, show IP interface brief, and this gives us again the abbreviated report on all of the interfaces, and I just widened that window there so that it was easier to read the report. But we can see there are Gigabit interfaces, there are some serial interfaces, and there are fast Ethernet interfaces, and then a virtual LAN as well on that device. So you could just move on and open the window for router 2, go to the command line interface, hit the enter key once or possible time twice, and you have the same password for the console and the privileged exec mode, and we get the prompt for router 2, and we can show IP interface brief on that particular device. And again, I'll widen the window to make the report a little easier to read. So that is the tasks and commands that you would need to get through the first several questions on the lab. And then to configure the router interfaces, the lab actually gives you some very clear information on what you would need to do. You get into configuration mode, of course, by using config terminal. So you have to move from the privileged exec mode to configuration. So let's go back over and config terminal so that we have the proper command prompt, and then it will be not difficult for you to merely follow the instructions exactly as they are in either your Word document or the instructions that are built into the packet tracer activity. Step 2, we can see says configure the remaining Gigabit Ethernet interfaces on router 1 and router 2. So you're just going to use the information in the addressing table above and really follow the same model of activity that you used on the 00 gigabit interface in order to finish the configurations on the other interfaces. You can verify the interface configurations again by using show commands. So you would either want to use the show IP interface brief for that report that is a little short information of all the interfaces, and then you will be able to read the IP address information that you've configured on each of those interfaces to proofread it and make sure that you didn't fat finger anything. You can also get a detail report, show IP interface, and then a particular interface, like in this case, the serial 000, and then we will see what I did. Oh, I want you to try to think about it before I tell you. I used a show command from the configuration prompt. So the Cisco equipment is very hierarchical in terms of commands only being appropriate when you're in a certain mode or level. So I was not configuring. So let's exit out of that configuration mode and then go back to the main area and show IP interface on that particular S0/0/0, or we sometimes say S000 interface, and got lots of details about that interface. In this case, we're proving that it is up. The line protocol is up. We see what the internet address is along with the mask information. So a /30 would be equivalent to a mask that is 255.255.255.252, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. But if you sort of visualize in your mind, you remember an IP version 4 address is 4 octets, right? So 8 bits dot 8 bits dot 8 bits in 4 segments. So that last octet is, made up of, 2 to the 0 power, 2 to the 1st, 2 squared, 2 to the 4th, etc. as you go up, and you're able to count from 0 through 255 using those 8 binary bits. So the mask, if the mask says 255, that means all 8 of those bits are set to a value of 1, meaning that all mask bits set to 1 represent the network part of the address, and any parts of the address that are allocated for host addressing or end device addressing then have those mask bits set to 0. And we'll discuss this again further in a video discussion dedicated to that topic. Just understand that when we look at this /30 here, we can associate that with the S000 having a subnet mask here of 255, 255, 255, and again, 252. So you can work that out in ones and zeros and prove to yourself that there will be 30 binary ones followed by just 2 zeros at the end if you worked out this dotted decimal into its binary notation. And let's see if there's anything else that is difficult in this particular assignment. You should already have had an exercise where you configured a description on an interface, save the configuration to Nvram. That is just copying the running config to the startup config. So copy running config to startup config. Like so. You'll also find out in short order that you can do some abbreviating. So copy run start is also interpreted by the device correctly. Use the show IP root command on both of the routers to view the current routing tables. Remember that those items in a routing table that are beginning with a C are directly connected. And then there are other symbols to represent routing protocols, OSPF being one of the common protocols. And you will see that also in the routing table. And does the number match the number of C's and O's shown in the table? Well, you will have to distinguish that after you've done the configurations. And you always test end-to-end connectivity using ping commands. So ping space and then an IP address, and you will want to see packets flowing in both directions. So number sent equal number received. Sometimes you'll have to do a ping twice till you get 100% perfect packet accepting. And that's just because it takes one time to negotiate the connection. So I hope this gave you a little bit of a heads up. And remember, once you get down to the bottom, if you do not have 100%, go use the check results and over here at assessment items so that you can determine what it is that you need to correct. This is a good lab. It gives you some good practice, not only configuring, but using the important show commands, which again are your go-to sets of commands for doing research and then also verifying the configurations that you have just completed. So good luck. And if you have any questions as you work through labs, do not forget to shoot me an email and I will do my best to answer your question as soon as possible.